Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We promise it's going to be a very exciting conversation. These three are shaping sports, or have been shaping sports and inclusion as we know it. So I want to start with a coming out story. And this is appropriate. It's exciting. I haven't asked this question in a really long time. We used to always ask this question, and it was a way to normalize diversity and make it feel more safe for our community members, especially our LGBTQIA plus community members, to come out. So share a coming out story, whatever it means to you, ally, LGBTQIA plus, sports enthusiast, because I'm going to come out as a person who's just getting into sports as a queer person. Megan, we'll start with you.
Oh, well, I mean, maybe it's too on brand and cliche, but I can tell a quick coming out story as coming out as an Olympian that was gay and identified as a lesbian. It was my first Games Rio, and HRC was having a celebratory party, and I had a fellow athlete on the New Zealand team who knew that I was, and I wasn't really out publicly, and came up, he said, "I'm really nervous about going, will you go with me?" And it was that friendship that made me say, you know what, if he can be as brave, I can be brave with him. It was really empowering to do that on the global stage at the Olympic Games. So that's my coming out story, is my first time being an Olympic and being a gay Olympian.
Woo, that's amazing.
Okay, how do you beat that?
I'm sorry.
I don't know how you beat that.
I think, what I want to share is something that just means quite a bit to me, and being in this role. And I think both of you will probably understand this, is you have so many people who come up to you because you're safe, and they will tell you either their coming out story or their child's coming out story, or they will ask you, what do? I think my child is gay, and you can help, help them walk through what they're feeling and what they should and shouldn't do and things like that. And so being in this role, just having the opportunity to help people address coming out situations is phenomenal. Yeah.
Thank you, Roscoe.
Yeah, this question made me think of something that happened probably a few years ago at work. And, I've been around long enough that, in different industries, that sometimes I was out, sometimes I wasn't out. I remember I've always been out at the 49ers. It's like one of the first things people learn about me. And because I always have hilarious stories about my wife. And I was walking with a new employee, and we were walking into the stadium, and I knew he was very new to the team, and I was like, "Oh, hi, blah, 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 blah," just getting to know. And offhandedly just mentioned my wife. I was just like, I'm just going to say this because I just have a feeling. And that was actually the snowball to us having the first LGBTQ employee resource group in the NFL, was because I came up to this young person and started talking to them, and we all realized there was more of us than we thought there were. And that's how it started. But it actually started with just a quick conversation. And years later, he was like, that was a really important conversation to me, because then I realized I wasn't alone.
So thank you so much for sharing that. So we'll go back to you, Christina. That's a perfect segue to talk about the fact that, this position, the first ever senior director for inclusion for the San Francisco 49ers, what was the landscape for the Niners and inclusion before that? What did you walk into?
I'm very lucky that I walked into the organization that I walked into. I think I always, folks ask me why I took the job. And at first I was like, I didn't want to take the job. I actually looked at my wife and I'm like, what do they think they're going to do? This is an organization, this is a football, this is I'm in social justice, and there was this moment where I realized, though, that I did a lot of research and I started having a lot of conversations, and I realized this isn't new for the 49ers. It's just the position is new. It goes back to the work of Dr. Harry Edwards and the work he did with the team with Bill Walsh, and the fact that they also, at the time, I don't think they knew, but they hired the first openly gay trainer. And he was open as much as you could be in the 80s. And so I walked into an environment that was already rich it was already understood understood the assignment. All I did was try to kind of operationalize it, also make them understand what this could actually look like, and also brought a different lens because of the fact that it was already, it's a football team. And so we have a lot of women who work there, but I don't think that they understood what having more and more layers of diversity could look like. And so I walked into an environment that was really ripe for this. All I did was kind of what I like to say is till the soil.
This is a follow-up to that, and just, the whole idea is to share the story of, I think it feels like a domino effect. Like once you started seeing your people, right, in executive roles and in the fan, especially as fans, like who are out, who are proud, and you start to feel a little bit more comfortable to say, oh, great, I'm invited, I'm going. This feels great. Now, Megan, on the other side, right, athlete, now executive, that whole idea of for us, by us, I think you're, representational of that. So let's talk about building a sports team that's pretty much for us, by us, and for everyone else.
Yeah, I love this question. And I'll make a quick correction to my intro. I'm a founding owner, and that's what you're getting at, is Love San Francisco has done a really intentional job and approach to creating a group of owners that represents a new way of ownership across sports, women's sports, but across sports, and hopefully setting a model. And that translates to there's more women. That's not traditional in sport, but the owners represent the community and what the community looks like, where we're from. And as an athlete, it's been a while since I picked up an oar, or I played volleyball in college since I played volleyball, but as an athlete, to look at the owners and to look at the front office. We have we've now built out our front office team, and it's also representative of the community we're in, and the players, both in race, gender, sexuality. And so that creates that space where athletes can show up and be themselves and feel safe to, of course, perform at the highest level, but be human and be able to have a life that's more than just their athletic pursuit. And that's what I love, no pun intended, love San Francisco, the team has put as priority one in terms of building a team in ownership, as well as the front office that helps athletes feel safe and feel as though they are represented by the people that are leading them.
I'm going to come back to women in sports ownership and more women in sports, and I love it. Of course I love it, but we'll come back to that. Roscoe, this question is for you. So Charles mentioned 11 seasons. There are a lot of firsts for the Giants as far as inclusion. I'll point out one. In 2021, the San Francisco Giants became the first Major League Baseball team to wear Pride-themed uniforms on the field. I'm a proud owner of a Pride Month jersey, and I'm so proud to always wear it. Let's talk about, what does it take to get a whole community, including the players themselves, not just, staff in the front office and the fans, but also the players themselves to participate?
Yeah. Well, I want to sort of echo something that CJ said. I walked into, and I'm very proud to work for an organization that is so connected to the community. Well before we had worn Pride-themed jerseys, we had signed on to an amicus brief supporting marriage equality. We had hired the first female MLB coach. Our players did a PSA to combat LGBTQ bullying. Even early in the 90s, we raised money and awareness publicly for HIV and AIDS. So when it came to the jersey, that culture and infrastructure was there. And so it's basically expanding those efforts, because so many people operationally have to be involved in something like that, right? Somebody has to make the jerseys, right? Operations has to be involved, marketing, communications, clubhouse, so on and so forth, leaders across the organization. And so everybody sees the moment on the field when all the players are wearing the jerseys. What is incredibly powerful and moves the ball so much when it comes to safety is all of the little conversations that have to happen between and across people to make this happen over that period. People are on a different path in their journey and understanding, and when you do something that big, you are creating space to be able to have those conversations to execute on something. So, just in short, I'm incredibly proud to be a part of that. But the organization had done so many incredible things before that. It was just a matter of expanding that out to our partners and things.
Thank you all three for setting the stage for us and letting us know about all the work that you're doing and proving the fact that by having folks like you in these positions do indeed, right, make an impact for all of us to enjoy the sport. Let's turn our attention to the players themselves, because let's face it, right, the players have huge impact. They have fans. That's why we go to the games. Young people idolize, right, their favorite athletes. How do we make it more safe for them? I love, CJ, what you were saying earlier about being able to come to the office and joke about your wife, right? And Megan talking about even just showing up as yourself, your whole self. And Roscoe going back to the history of every facet or angle when the community has needed you, or the team has stepped up. Let's talk about making it more safe for the athletes themselves to show up.
I'll start, I guess. I think what's been interesting is, this week, I'm sure some of you saw what Charles Barkley said about the fact that, there's just cannot not be gay players. And if you don't think that's true, he was just basically that's ridiculous. And so I think it needs to be, unfortunately, we're in a social media environment, that is who we are, and they understand, and our players understand that, they just don't feel comfortable. But it takes people like Charles Barkley to come out and say things like, do you understand that we live in a homophobic society? And I think it's moments like that do move the needle. It's moments like those, though we don't have any out players on our team right now, it is the fact that we continue to show up, that we have players who show up, to the events that we do and really have tried to step up where they can. Because I'm sure they know who are and who are not, or there are people who are scared. And so what we've really tried to do is continue to be a safe space, because that is all we can do until people feel safe to come out. If I didn't feel safe coming out 10 years ago, I can't imagine a player on that stage trying to do their job and also deal with the world around us. And so I think it's also giving grace, and something that we try to do is give grace to understanding that that we have to do what we can until someone feels comfortable and understands that the world is ready for them, because unfortunately the world isn't.
Adding on that, you're seeing over the last few years, this, I don't want to call it no tolerance policy, but not allowing fans to bully and berate athletes, whether they are gay, their racial background, whatever it might be. But fans used to get away with a lot. It used to be considered part of the game. And now you're seeing fans removed for saying derogatory statements, picking on, especially if an athlete has come out on the women's, more female athletes at this point. But you do see it in arenas and stadiums that there's limited and finally no tolerance for that kind of behavior. And that helps in establishing policy, helps create that environment where athletes feel safe to come out or at least be themselves, and that they know that their team has their back, and that they can be, again, their full self, and that they're going to feel safely to be performing at their best and not have to hide part of themselves.
Yeah, that's, I feel an important perspective for us to have is the perspective of the athletes. So I really appreciate this question. For most athletes, they're in their professional careers for just a few years. They've spent their entire lives getting ready for this moment. And, there's, for any athlete who has a fear that their identity might put them in an unsafe situation, no matter what age, they're making this sort of mental calculation all the time and in any situations. And what you two have both described is it's our responsibility to put as many signals as we can out there so that while they're making these mental calculations, they're calculating all the visibility they're seeing. That's why cultural competency, we were talking about this before, is really critical. But I'll add one more thing to it. Safe spaces are incredibly important. Brave spaces move the needle. And the difference is, in a brave space, people have grace, they also have accountability for what they say, and they also have care. And there's a commitment that you're going to have the conversation and stay in the conversation. The more brave spaces we can create, more culture we can create around brave and safe spaces, the more people are going to feel more comfortable talking about this, and players are going to see that at any age if they haven't come out yet.
Megan brought up policy, so I'm gonna ask a couple questions about that. Within your organizations, are there policies around making sure there's education within the organization on LGBTQ issues? For example, right, like, yes, coming out, support your teammate. If your teammate does come out to you, here are some ways you could be helpful, you could be supportive. Or, the same policy, if a fan says derogatory things, does it work both ways for athlete, coach, the internal organization relationship? What's more, we can get into HR stuff, but what about just kind of like that stuff, like a little bit deeper of education? Like Pride Month, does the internal organization participate? Are they encouraged to participate in Pride Month activities and things like that?
Yes. Yes. This is kind of fun for us as a team because we do so much for Pride internally. Yes, we do some external things, but like right now we're like finalizing our plans, but I let the employees decide. Like, we have an employee resource group that is our, as I said earlier, LGBTQ first one in the league, and we also had the first fan group, and it's going strong. And they do some fun things and fun activations. We do this awesome drag brunch that is very fun. Internally, though, we try to figure out, like, what does it look like? What does it look like to educate the rest of the staff? What we bring in speakers, we do newsletters. All of those things. But we also are like try to bring them in. We're like, well, what's culture for us? And so like, we'll have meetings where we just like, we're going to kiki today. And like, it's just like, we try to bring in these things that are very like cultural competency. And not everybody is coming from the same space. So, though I am, identify as queer and like, and am married, we actually have one of our employees, who he and his husband are about to have a baby, and they just had a baby shower in the middle of the office. And that moment made me smile because I was just like, yes, this is the kind of an environment that like makes people feel safe. It like his entire team showed up for this. He's about to go on paternity leave, and it's moments like that mean like we're doing our job. I'm doing my job. When it comes to policy, yes, my goal has always been. This is one of those moments where like being the first in this role, it's like, I don't want someone to walk in the office and be the first person we test all these policies out on. Like, I'm like, let's get these policies in place and done, so that therefore when someone does come into the office and needs something, like they understand that we're not like scrambling, like, oh, we've never done this before. So even if you may be the first, you're not the first person to like, we aren't pulling the policies together as you're standing there. And so those are the type of things that are important internally for us, on top of the fact that like we normalize that kind, having a baby shower for anybody who's about to have a baby. And that was like, again, just one of those really big moments for us where I was like, I'm doing my job. And everybody else is doing their job, which is more important. Like, I can't be the culture keeper. Like, everyone, like the fact that I didn't have to go and be like, are we doing a baby shower? That actually just, it happened. And so those are those moments that matter.
Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah.
Phil or Roscoe?
Yeah, a lot of the same things. We do a lot of programs. We have a lot of speakers come in. I like to have speakers for all different levels as well. So we'll have speakers come in for everybody, and we'll have some speakers sometimes come in for senior leadership and just different things like that. We'll take field trips out to the GLBT Historical Society, and we'll create opportunities like that. Help celebrate Ricky's when it opened. It was pretty great. Larry Bear and Buster Posey signed a jersey and donated to them. All of those things are really important. Our ERG actually was started by allies. The Proud ERG was started by allies a long time ago. And so just to know that we're not, the culture police, if you will, that everybody is involved in that is important. Visibility is important. One of the things that we started a few years ago was putting a pride sticker on your name tag so that people knew that you were at least a supporter and somebody safe to talk to if you can. So when you walk through the office, you'll see these name tags with pride stickers all on them and stuff. So all of those things, matter.
And I can speak, love San Francisco is, we're starting our season next January, so please show up. And so a little bit, obviously, behind in terms of years, but one thing that Love San Francisco has done is show up in the community. So showing up at Pride next month and being present and showing support, whether it's allies, but just providing that visibility and say, we are a part of this community and we support this. I've been a part of other organizations in the same way that visibility matters in terms of support, of course, policy, but acting. And like you said, not just leaving the culture keeping to one person and making sure that the whole organization shows up. LA28, I worked for LA28 for a few years, and we're looking at the games in a couple of years and making sure that, they show up at Pride in LA, but the LA28 emblem has a Pride emblem, and that they are showing and being proud of that as part of not only their community, but that it's a safe space. And so I think organizations, both in policy, but I love the examples, is it has to be in action, and that's the way that you create that safe space.
By the way, audience members, we will get a chance to ask your questions. We will have a volunteer come around with the mic, so just raise your hand if you'd like to ask any of our speakers your questions. Well, I don't want to dwell on, the fact that sports over the years, or historically speaking, has not been so inclusive, because we wouldn't be up here if we hadn't made, a lot of progress, and you had talked about a lot of that progress. So let's shift and talk about some of the progress that we have made in the last 5 to 10 years. I was just going back to an interview that I did with NBA icon, whom we've just lost, Jason Collins. And so thank you to, organizations like Pride House that exist today. And I think that Jason and Pride House are all examples of the progress, right, that we've made in sports. So if you can just talk about that. I know you've already spoken about the activities and things that you've done and being the first, right? But for you, at least, somebody who's in the sports industry, part of the organization, probably a fan. You better be a fan. I see all your gear. You're right, fans yourselves. What does that progress look like for you? Megan, do you want to? We'll just go back down this way.
I started this by talking about my coming out story in Rio, and I'm going to get the numbers right, but it was something like, maybe 27 Olympians and Paralympians were out, somewhere in that number. And then in the most recent Summer Games, Paris, astronomical increase of out athletes competing. It was in the hundreds. And that growth over, 8 years is something I'm really proud of seeing, because athletes feel comfortable enough to be on a global stage, safe enough to, again, be themselves, but also make a statement, because they know that other young people, everyone in the world is tuning in. And if they can show up and compete and say also proudly that I'm queer, I'm gay, whatever it is, and hopefully inspire a young kid to feel like they're one of, they're normal and they're accepted and that they have a future, is really powerful. I didn't have that growing up. And so that's one thing that has for me as coming up as an athlete and then seeing that, hopefully being that change and then seeing that change has been really, really wonderful. We still have a long ways to go, obviously, but it's a great outcome in terms of the trajectory is going the right way.
Yeah. I would say, I remember when, I don't know how many people know Billy Beane. Billy Beane passed away a couple of years ago. He's the first or second MLB player to come out after he retired. And the commissioner at the time, I guess this was 12, 13 years ago, made Billy the first ambassador to the community in an attempt to make baseball much more inclusive. And his job was to go around and speak to presidents, CEOs, clubhouses, minor league, professional, major league, and tell his story and answer questions and create those brave spaces. And he did that for a number of years and then became the head of diversity, equity, inclusion for Major League Baseball. And it's because of a lot of that work that you saw MLB participating in New York Pride. You've seen other teams do more. I think one of the greatest things that's an indicator for me of our advancing is, I don't necessarily have to be in the room when we're planning Pride game, right? We have an incredible team that works closely with the community, but has done the work themselves to understand the culture in the community, whether it's learning or having meaningful professional relationships, that when they help design that day, it's phenomenal. And you've been a part of that day. You've been a part, and I certainly hope you come this year.
You giving me a ticket? Is that?
I might know somebody. We'll see. But the fact that, it's always great to have somebody queer and representing in the room all the time. But the fact that you can trust your colleagues, that they're going to nail it, that shows progress. And I see that across our organization in almost every department, that people are making themselves culturally aware of what's going on and culturally competent and to be able to do their job effectively.
It's really great.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the fact that I don't have to be in the room all the time. I just don't. At the very beginning when I first started this role, I had to be in the room. Only until people realized it was not so much that they couldn't do it; it's that they felt like they would mess it up.
Right.
And I gave them. I feel like there's this psychological safety, which is an overused word, but we're going to use it and say they felt fear that they were going to mess it up because I don't think that they realize we all work together, that giving each other grace is a real thing. And when you give people grace and that sometimes they're going to mess up, but for the most part they're not, and that they're going to take the time to learn because they care and because they love their coworkers, and they now know how many of us are in the organization, and also they have friends and family. And can't tell you, kind of to Roscoe's point, how many of employees, I have employees who are parents of LGBTQ kids and young adults and adults, and them being able to be in a space where they can tell me something like that, and they know they also understand that they're part of creating belonging, and so I think that's also a piece of this, of what I've seen as I'm just kind of the old lady in the room, just watching the young folks do their thing, and being able to just kind of watch that and enjoy it. And that it's been incredible to watch. And I think that for me is watching it happen right before my eyes, and watching it also happen to other teams right before my eyes, because it was fun being the first, but we don't want to only be the first. We want other people to be with us. And so it's been fun to watch that happen over the last 5 or 6 years.
And it lifts us up too, right? We work in spaces where we're constantly having complex conversations. You're giving quite a bit of yourself. And when you see colleagues are running with something on their own and just nailing it, and you feel safe in that space, you have this moment of just pride.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a real exciting time for sports and queer people and women. I mean, I went from it was great in college for a lot of reasons, especially coming out as a queer person in sports. That's a different show. But now as, member of the community, as a fan, and especially the Bay Area, I know there's somebody out here wearing or rocking a Valkyries shirt as well. A $1 billion team, and they've just got, they're just getting started. going to one of their events, and they're out there in the community doing some of the stuff that y'all are paving the way for, right? These championship teams to do. We will definitely be at a Love Volleyball San Francisco game for sure, our next champs. But where I'm going with that is, to see all these people so excited. And it's not just one group of people who are like excited for the championship teams and the sports teams or women in sports, but like it's like everybody. And I think that that's what's the most exciting thing. And I wish that people really saw this, especially outside of the Bay Area, that it doesn't mean that your ticket sales, the bottom line of your business is going to change because your team is inclusive. I wanted, to give a moment for all of you to just kind of talk about that. I think there's fear for some teams or even some countries. We're going to talk about the Men's World Cup in just a second. I think we think about that if we show inclusion or we show pride, that there's fear that it would impact their business. You can counter. I think all three of you have proof that business is good for inclusion.
Business is very good. One of the things, just kind of speak to that, Roscoe makes fun of me all the time because I have a lot of swag. It's one of the reasons why I don't have on the mic on the ears, because I refuse to take my earrings off. But we have a lot of swag. And one of the things that I'm probably most proud of is we have merchandise lines for our LGBTQ employees, our Black employees, and our Asian employees, and Latino and Hispanic employees are about to come out this year. They're created by our employees internally. We have a partnership with our the merchandise who supplies our merchandise, and they are like, every year they're like, which collection do you want to do? And these are sold to the public. This is actually lines of like that you can go out and purchase. And it's one of those moments when I started it, I was like, are we going to do this? And they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. And it's sold out every year. And so it's one of those things where like we understand who our fans are. We also understand we believe in being authentic to the work. And like understanding that if you want LGBTQ fans to buy, you want to know that the internal employees who created it were LGBTQ, because we know what we're looking for. It's like a funny story about a flannel jacket that one day all of the LGBTQ employees were on a call all wearing flannel. And then we were like, okay, so I guess one of the lines needs to be a flannel jacket. And it was. And so like, it was one of those like authentic moments of like saying, yes, no, that's actually what we want, rather than just everything being a Pride t-shirt. Like, that's not it. And so that's when we're saying like, we see you, because we are you. And so that is like saying like, we believe in the entire community of our fans, and they understand that we are part of that, and we drive ticket sales, we drive all of those things, and that's part of it, but it's not all of it.
Yeah, I think baseball has a history, and everybody knows the story of Jackie Robinson, right? And the moment that opened up, Major League Baseball got exciting. There was the Negro Leagues, which was exciting, and MLB was exciting. But the moment it became more inclusive, it got better. You're seeing baseball globally being played. Players are getting recruited from Korea, from Japan, a number of places. And so, yes, inclusion is really, really important to I wouldn't say just business, I would say society as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
for sure.
I'll round it out. I think, in today's world where you never know what's real or not, that the one thing that sports does is it's always real. And the most important currency that makes for a good sports environment is belonging. So I come from a commercial background. I care about tickets. I care about sponsors. But none of that matters unless people show up. And the Valkyries are $1 billion franchise because they create a sense of belonging. A couple years in, and they've hit that. They haven't won a championship yet, right? But they
Close.
very close this year. But they create that sense of belonging because it's good for business. And you have to be really, again, intentional about that from the merch. Like, I love that story, from the merch to the environment in the stadium or the arena. And that's what's good for business. That's how you get butts in seats. That's how you get people to tune in. That's how you get people to want to be a part of the team. And I think what San Francisco and the Bay Area is doing is creating an ecosystem of belonging. And that's what's really exciting. And love is obviously a leg on that stool, for sure.
Because you can be anyone and love women's, men's, all of the sports. And like, I think that's to your point about belonging. Like, we create an environment where like, you're going to go catch a Valkyries game, and then you're going to go check a Giants game out. And you know what I mean? Like, and then we're going to go see volleyball next year. You know, like, that is what we're going to be. And that's who we are.
Yeah.
And in the stands, you don't know who you're standing next to.
No.
You don't know what their background is. They can be from anywhere. You're standing shoulder to shoulder or sitting shoulder to shoulder with somebody you don't even know, cheering for the team that you're there for, and excited in the same way. Sports is an incredible.
Yeah. And connecting
place, right?
over the experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so true. I've made so many new friends
Yeah.
at games. I swear I'm paying attention as well. I know what's going on. But the relationships around me are also, it's so great. And I'd love a flannel, CJ, by the way.
All right, I'll make it happen. I'll see if we have any more.
We have a few minutes left, and I know that I asked for questions earlier. If you have any questions, raise your hand. Dan, do we have a volunteer? Cool, we have a question right here.
Sorry, I stole one
front.
of the volunteer mics because I refuse to take these earrings
The
off.
earrings, yeah.
The earrings were important to the outfit.
I knew they were coming.
I know.
I'm
I
a
was
fan.
going to say it.
I'm a fan of the earrings.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I guess the question I want to ask, especially I think from the perspective of the Giants and the 49ers, is that you were talking about earlier about the players who might be in the closet and are struggling to, decide if they're going to come out and things like that. But I think, and everything that you're talking about that's being done internally at your organizations is great. But I think the question I have for you is about some of the other players. There's so much toxic masculinity in sports, especially in the NFL and Major League Baseball and things like that. And these players have such a platform on social media and in so many other ways. And so my question is, how do you get those people on board? Because it sounds like internally within the organization itself, there's great progress. But I guess my perception, and I've been a sports fan my whole life, is that these players who are out there making all the money, there's a separation between what's happening in the organization and who those players are. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I will try to answer your question as best as I can, which is, everyone that even though we're a very progressive organization, I can't sit here and say that every single person has the same views. And sometimes that worries me, because what I want is for everybody to feel comfortable with if they have an opinion and if it differs from mine, I want to make sure that they feel comfortable so that we can have a conversation. And so there's only so much we can do with the players, because they are all individuals, and they also understand, kind of to Roscoe's point earlier, of like social media, that's their brand. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in, where they have a brand to protect. They have their 5 years. Our average is, I think, 4, maybe 5 years of them being a player. And they've worked their butts off to get to the point that they're at. And sometimes that is as far as they're willing to go. What we can do is make our internal environments as comfortable as we possibly can. And that doesn't mean just the business side. That does mean the football side, like men's football side. It means like we do everything that we can to make sure that they feel comfortable inside our walls. And again, that's not just our business employees, but there's only so much we can do for our employees to feel safe and understand that this is as far as they can go right now, because of the environment in which we all live. And I know that's probably not the best answer, but it's an honest answer, because it would be completely different if we didn't live in a world that just perpetuated toxic masculinity. And unfortunately we do. And so that for football, men's football, means that it's really hard for them to come out. I've met Carl Nassib. He's an incredible human being. And it was really hard for him to try to exist in the space. And I'm sure a lot of other people saw him and Michael Sand and said, yeah, no, I don't think so. And just decided like it's better just to do my 5 years and then get out and then do what I need to do.
Yeah, because I think Carl Nassib came out after 5 years and then retired after 2. Yep. And Jason Collins came out after playing 12 years or 13 years and then retired the next year. So one of the reasons why I tried to explain, let's get in the mindset of an athlete of any age, whether they're pro or a kid, is there's a lot of things that you're calculating because of such the short window and everything. One of the most difficult things that I had to settle with in taking this role and doing this role is discovering that the journey for where people get on a certain, in a certain topic can be long, and everybody's on a different point on that timeline. And what's so special about Bay Area teams is they recognize that value of having people like CJ and myself in their organization that focuses hard on creating those spaces where we can have those conversations. And so for some players, they're going to come to the San Francisco Giants, they're going to wear, a pride cap, and that might be their first experience. And so what do you do with that? Somebody who's never had this experience before. And we're in a position where we have to create those spaces. I can imagine how frustrating it might be for fans. It's like, come on, we need more players to come out and everything. I get that. But not everybody is coming into it from born and raised in San Francisco. And so we have to be prepared to have different conversations with different folks, have grace,
Yep.
and show up for them. That's our role.
That's the biggest thing that we can do is show up for them,
Yeah.
because our average player, they're like 21 and 22, and we're sometimes the first gay people they've ever met.
Yeah.
And so them even having the conversation with us is a huge moment for them, because they've never met, especially a gay Black person. Absolutely not. They've never met that. And so it blows their mind. And so we start there. And then the next time they've met somebody who is LGBTQ, it's not so frightening for them. And then not all of them. Some of people are from different, very diverse backgrounds, but for a lot of times we have to give grace in those moments, because it's a lot for them to come into our space. They also know coming to San Francisco what they're getting into, which is we are a very progressive organization. So make sure that if you don't understand and you don't know, we try really hard to make sure they understand. But it's a lot of giving grace.
Anything else to add? Any other questions? We'll take one more if there is. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Oh, there's one right here in the front.
I'll try to phrase this as I intend it. And it's going to sound a little more for Roscoe and the Giants, but it's really for all. I recognize the challenges when someone is meeting an out person for the first time, especially a player is doing that, and the player has been focused on their career the whole time. I'm also thinking about someone like Aubrey Huff and the San Francisco Giants not inviting him to their reunion for their World Series team after some of the things he said on social media. I'm wondering, would the Giants or other teams make a bigger statement by not signing or trading for players who have crossed a certain line like that? And also, I recognize that isn't your role, but
Okay, good.
if you gathered, from your experiences, I'm just curious, because that would be a much bigger statement, I think.
I think that's certainly an interesting perspective, and I understand where that's coming from. I would say, I don't know how this is going to come out, but the reason I love my job so much is that I get to have sometimes the first conversation or the second conversation with people who have never met people like us before. And I trust that I'm going to guide that conversation and take care of that individual in that conversation. And I don't know if we reject people, are they going to have that opportunity to have that conversation and advance it there? And when you come to the San Francisco Giants, you know we're steeped in the community. Buster Posey is incredible at conveying how important it is for players to be involved in the community. A lot of players have issues and things that they care about very much that they're involved in. But I would never throw away an opportunity to have a complex and challenging conversation that gets us closer, that closes that gap of perceived differences. So I absolutely understand where your question comes from, but I love my job because I get to have those hard conversations so that one day we'll get more people like Charles Barkley, right?
Mm-hmm.
Charles Barkley probably, and I can't speak for Charles Barkley, of course, but I can't imagine that he started as a 20-year-old, 19-year-old
Right.
in that place.
Right, yeah.
Somebody had to have conversations with him over time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, you're beautifully said, because I think it's so easy to just be like, that person is never going to change. And they're brash and they're mostly young. And they, again, are coming with experiences that just aren't the experiences of, the Bay Area. And as somebody who's from a flyover state, the idea that like I would just discount all the people I grew up with, and not give them a chance and not have a conversation with them because, sometimes I was the first Black person they had ever met. And I think that does a disservice to both of us because we don't get to learn from people who are different from us. And it does a disservice to them because they don't get a chance to become maybe the next Charles Barkley.
Well, this has been amazing. It's been great, and I wish I could just sit here and talk with you all night. We do have a reception, so I hope that all of you will stick around and chat with our superstars who are making it very safe for all of us. The last question is really around the Men's World Cup that's coming, right? Thank you, Pride House, for bringing us together in this way to have this very important conversation that we can make sports safe for all. Some countries who are going to show up and play matches here in the United States might come from countries that still persecute LGBTQIA plus people just for being themselves. So with that being said, very briefly, if you could just share an opportunity or a thought with fans, with folks, the world who's coming for the Men's World Cup, an opportunity for inclusion, or one thing to remember when we are coming together for this seismic global event that's happening here in the Bay Area too, what would it be? Megan?
I mean, a through line and a theme has been in this way of exposing people to different thought and different ways of life. And I think San Francisco, we are going to have people from all over the world, athletes as well as fans coming, and being able to welcome and create a space in which we welcome different ways of living and say that that's okay and that that's actually the norm. There's going to be a lot of people that probably do. They meet their first fill in the blank by coming to San Francisco. That's really powerful. I don't know if any other city in the U.S. can actually offer that experience in the way that we can. And I think that alone, I'm hopeful, will be a kind of a legacy moment for anyone who's coming through San Francisco and enjoying a game or two. And that we can, I know FIFA's there's scrutiny and there, of course, all the things, but we can hold that torch in terms of being a welcoming place and, challenging, I think, a lot of maybe norms that people who visit us have and helping them have conversations and having firsts. So.
That's really well said. I don't know if I can add much more to that.
I know. I mean, I think,
Really good.
I mean, the only thing I'll add is like my friends from Bay Area Host Committee know, like that there's this false narrative of who we are as the Bay, like this false narrative of who, and some of it, maybe it is a little bit true in some places, but like I think for the most part, we're a very welcoming place, and we're welcoming because of the fact that we have created a space for all the people who live here, and we all have different opinions. And even if we come, even if you are in the LGBTQ space, you may have a different opinion about fill in the blank. And the fact that we can come together and say, like, as a Bay Area, like, come visit us, come see us. We may be the first person that you meet, and we may change your opinion about who we are. And I think that's really, to your point, Megan, it's like, that's it.
Mic drop moment. It's a mic drop moment. Let's give it up for Megan, Roscoe, and CJ.